As matter influences other matter, or as influences pass from one matter combination to another body or matter combination, they go through some changes, simplifying as they descend and complicating as they ascend. The reason for this is as follows. As passing from one matter unit to a lower matter unit, because the sum part of the values which is the content of the influences is used in the higher unit, that influence descends to the lower unit as partly erased relative to its initial arrival and losing some of its values. So this state automatically protects the lower unit from the damage of a strong influence, and this constitutes one of the filtering mechanisms established for the safety of beings and matter in the universe. These mechanisms are necessary for matter. In order to emphasize their worth, we will consider Earth as an example. Direct and indirect influences, billions times billions, arrive at our world from the Sun, the Moon, stars, other celestial objects and planets, and a network of influences embraces the whole world. It is possible to guess the innumerable amount of the total of influences in hundreds of thousands arriving at each separate particle of beings and matter in the world. Thus, among these incoming influences there are, of course, the ones that can cause great damage to the world. However, apart from the regulation mechanisms belonging to the sources of sublime influence coming from way above, there are some filtering mechanisms, for the secondary influences, established around the world, which are protecting the world from harm by filtering strong influences. The aim of these filtering mechanisms is to ward off influences which are too strong for the world to bear. By means of these various mechanisms, some part of those influences bypass the world, without reaching it. Another filtering mechanism is the protecting mechanism established in the atmosphere by the influences coming from the Sun. This alters and renders some radiations and influences harmless, like excess radiations coming from outside or created artificially on Earth, which may cause great damage to the world. This operates in such a way that they do not interfere with vibrations coming from the Sun or from here and there, as long as they are not detrimental to the world. However, starting from the moment the dosages of these vibrations exceed certain limits to reach a state that can make the world aggrieved, this mechanism in the atmosphere starts automatically to work and continues to work until rendering those detrimental, or maybe deadly radiations harmless, and when it has decreased their dosages to a normal level, stops its activity. For example, if there were not such a mechanism in the atmosphere, radioactivity produced in the world could cause many deaths. These kind of filtering mechanisms besides others exist almost for all objects, all matter. Thus, as influences descend, decreasing of their values becomes a kind of filtering mechanism for the safety of the lower ones. And the complication of influences as they ascend from lower matter to higher matter is because of this. Ascending influences, as they are going up, meet with a wider field of influences, as a necessity of the structure of that level. By sympathizing with the influences there and receiving values from them, they widen their constitutions and in this way, become more complex. Therefore, an influence, as it descends and leaves some part of its values at each stage it stops by, descends while weakening and then vanishes. As going up, it ascends while increasing by receiving new values from each stage. This state is an imperative result of functions performed by the influences as they advance among matter, and as well, a necessity that allows them the possibility of each finding milieux which are sympathetic to them in the stages they stop by as they descend. If there were not these filters and these mechanisms, there would be various unfusibilities between matter and influences descending to being and matter combinations in order to render necessary changes in accordance with the evolutionary necessities, and these influences could often be detrimental instead of beneficial. All of these influence regulation mechanisms are again under the control of the superior influences carrying sublime necessities. Influences are the states of extra-universe truths which are reflected to matter. Again, these are the influences reflecting the reactions exhibited by matter to the outside of the universe. Influences, after they stimulate a matter, bring out a chain of consecutive influences by causing, with the motions of that matter, motions of other matter, and with these, motions of more other matter, which is a kind of automatism. There are myriad deeds executed with such automatisms. However, such consecutive automatic activities also occur only under the controls of descending influences, coming from above, from the beings in duty. The influences we have mentioned so far in outline enter matter structures in the state of various matter combinations with their endless variations, and ensure the innumerable exchanges between matter. All of these influences envelop the universe through and through, as a complicated network, which no human comprehension can grasp. In every particle of these, the sublime necessities of the original principle govern. All of these influences, despite their endless variations, perform their functions as a single power which had manifested in the subtlest matter of the universe within the great harmony of divine order. Everything that had been qualified by mankind as material, moral, corporeal, spiritual, starting from the first particle of the universe to its whole, could only advance in the inclusive order and arrangement of these influences carrying the necessities of sublime principles. For the ones who can intuit this point in all its details, it is practicable to comprehend that no flux or occurrence that is devoid of influences can be possible in the universe. After giving this general knowledge about the flux of influences, it is also necessary to talk about the functioning that occurs between universe parts, about how this functioning accrues, and finally, about the results brought about in their final targets. Because, for the organization systems constituting the basic structure of communal evolutionary life in the universe to be better intuited, we must go further in the knowledge of this topic. Organization systems complement each other with the interinfluence mechanism. Nevertheless, it is necessary to explain that the influences are not isolated but are together with organization systems, and the mechanisms building these systems. The universe is an organization through and through. However, within this great organization, organizational forms that emerge as states of organ-organizer start only from a certain stage of the universe, and continue until a certain stage. States of organizing which remain above and below these occur in the inclusivity of laws, and rules belonging to the order and devices of sublime principles which remains outside human comprehension. However, none of these is outside the great universe organization. The parts of universe organizations that can be intuited by mankind occur within organ-organizer relations. An organization works under the organizing of its higher organization. Here, the higher organization, which is in the status of organizer, throws light on the lower organization. This light has also come to it from a higher organization. This state continues on up to the unitary. In this way, a projector light, which is shed from the unitary to the whole universe, traverses the duty organizations from upward to downward, which are juxtaposed down to the lowest stages of the plan of duty. Meanwhile, as each organization does its duty with the light it received from the higher one, it also sends that light to the lower organization according to the needs of that organization, which appear as duty. Organizations at all stages and levels of the plan of duty, by the directives coming from the unitary, execute the duties which are their share within the scope of their encompassment and under the light of the directive descending from above. In the path of evolution, described by sublime principles, each organism has some definite duties. All components of that organism, by joining forces, according to their power and merit, are obliged to do these duties. No organ or organizer should abandon or neglect their share of duty. However, the refining experiences of spirits yet at the initial stages of the hydrogen cosmos have not advanced sufficiently to comprehend these truths and imperatives. This state is thoroughly lacking even in the ones which are more or less developed. The ones at this stage have not yet attained the comprehension of duty that carries the share of universe responsibility to various degrees. Because of this, duties of the governance mechanism cannot yet be left to these beings. Therefore, these are not included in great duty organizations. This is a work only belonging to beings involved with plans of duty, which are at more advanced stages of evolution. Nevertheless, superior beings, which are obliged out of duty to help the evolutions of these non-comprehending, even semi-comprehending beings at levels below, help them with the imperative acts which are their share for the preparations for the plan of duty. For this, various ensembles, groupings occur among them in order to prepare for the future organizations. And the beings in duty consign these groups and gatherings to preliminary work, conditionally, which is in some degree automatic or more or less comprehending. As these develop and expand their comprehension, they start to gain freedoms that increase accordingly. And meanwhile, they are gradually given intuitions into the great organization systems. So, this is how accrued matter, upon entering the stage of being and evolving there for a while, and from the moment it starts to build a plant body, entering into an ensemble and starting a new cycle of development. Likewise that being starts, as a consequence of a very long evolution and in accordance with the maturation of its sense of duty, enters the path of comprehending its obligations of duty and gaining an intuition of responsibility. And thus, it commences to intuit vast and wide paths leading to organizations of the great plan of duty.